Mr. Patel, during your confirmation hearing, you made several important commitments. For instance, you told Senator Coons there will be no politicization at the FBI. There'll be no retributive actions taken by any FBI should I be confirmed as FBI director.
I'm only speaking to my actions. Everybody is allowed to make their allegations.
Oh, no, these are allegations against you.
And
so, Mr. Patel, if FBI, senior FBI agents or employees said that you were firing them for political retribution reasons because of the cases they were assigned, you're saying they would be lying. Is that
anyone that was terminated at the FBI was done so for failing to meet the standards, uphold their constitutional oath, and effectuate the mission.
Hello, people. Sarah here. You want to know what happens when the person running the FBI gets caught red-handed lying to a federal judge? Yeah, that's the story we're diving into today. And this isn't some minor mistake or misunderstanding. We're talking about Kash Patel, Trump's handpicked director of the FBI, getting absolutely exposed in court with his sworn testimony completely contradicting actual documents.
Welcome back to The Takeout. FBI Director Kash Patel testified before a Senate committee today about the killing of Charlie Kirk. Democratic senators sparred with him about that and several other issues. Scott McFarland with me again. I'm always happy to have you with me, Scott.
Well, if you wanted to watch Kash Patel answer questions about Jeffrey Epstein, about the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation, and about the firings inside the Department of Justice, you could have done that for 4 hours today, because that's what was happening at the Senate Judiciary Committee, this marathon hearing, question after question. He made a little bit of news on the Jeffrey Epstein matter.
This is wild stuff. The kind of thing that should make every single person sit up and pay attention, regardless of what side of the political fence you're on. Here's what happened in simple terms. Patel went into federal court and essentially lied his face off about what orders existed, what the FBI was doing, and whether he was involved in firing people connected to Trump investigations. A judge literally looked at the court records, then looked at what Patel said under oath and was like, that's not what this says at all. And now we're talking about potential criminal contempt charges, perjury referrals, and immediate removal from his position as FBI director. This is the kind of moment that defines an institution. Let's be real for a second. This is huge. This isn't about some partisan talking point or political theater. A federal judge caught the FBI director contradicting sworn testimony with actual court documents. When the person running the FBI gets caught potentially committing perjury, that's a legitimate crisis. That's not hyperbole. That's just the factual reality of what's happening right now. The judge didn't write some vague criticism. The judge looked at specific claims Patel made and compared them to specific court documents and said, these don't match. That's serious business. And here's what makes this even more explosive. Patel didn't just make a small mistake or misremember something minor. The judge found that he was claiming court orders and blanket prohibitions existed when they literally didn't. He was using these fake legal restrictions as an excuse for why he couldn't release documents. But when the judge actually checked the records, there were no such restrictions. The judge was basically saying, those orders you're talking about don't exist. Release the stuff now, or we're charging you with contempt and referring you for perjury prosecution. That's not a gentle suggestion. That's a federal judge putting down the law. And then it gets worse, because at the exact same time this courtroom drama is exploding, Patel is firing FBI agents left and right. We're talking about at least 10 agents who worked on the Trump classified documents investigation getting terminated. Coincidence? Most people looking at these two things happening simultaneously see a pretty clear pattern. The guy who just got caught lying about covering up documents is now firing the people who investigated those very documents. That's not a coincidence. That's a strategy. Senator Dick Durbin called him out directly on this. He accused Patel of outright perjury, specifically about denying knowledge of an FBI purge that was allegedly directed by Stephen Miller. Durbin had whistleblower sources backing this up. So you've got a U.S. senator standing up and saying, this guy lied under oath. And the evidence is pretty strong. The whistleblowers said Patel had direct communications about these purges. They said this wasn't some rogue operation. They said Patel knew exactly what was happening and participated in it. Think about what this actually means. The FBI is supposed to be an independent law enforcement agency. It's supposed to investigate crimes, protect the country, and operate without political interference. But when the director is caught potentially committing perjury, firing investigators who looked into the president, and using fake legal justifications to block document releases, that's not an independent agency anymore. That's something that looks a lot more like a political tool. And here's the thing that really gets under people's skin. one. This isn't happening in a vacuum. This is all connected. Patel fires agents who investigated Trump. Patel denies involvement in FBI purges under oath. Patel claims court orders prevent document releases. Then a judge checks the facts and finds none of that is accurate. The timeline, the pattern, the connected pieces. It all paints a pretty damning picture. You're looking at a clear sequence of events that suggest retaliation, cover-ups, and abuse of power. The judge didn't just slap Patel on the wrist. The judge ordered him to comply with the document release by a strict deadline, and the warnings were serious. Perjury, prosecution, criminal contempt charges. We're talking about potential 5-year sentences, license loss, the full federal consequences for lying under oath to a judge. That's not some theoretical threat. That's a federal judge putting criminal consequences on the table. That's saying if you don't fix this, you're going to face jail time. To understand how Kash Patel got caught in this legal nightmare, we need to go back and understand what he was actually claiming in his testimony. Patel went into court and made several specific claims. He said he had no knowledge of FBI purges. He said court orders prevented the release of certain files, specifically the Epstein materials. He claimed there were blanket legal prohibitions that blocked him from complying with document requests, and he denied directing or participating in any firing of FBI personnel connected to Trump investigations. These weren't vague statements. These were specific factual claims about specific legal documents. These were sworn statements that carry legal consequences if they weren't true. Here's the problem. Every single one of those claims got fact-checked against actual court documents, and almost all of them fell apart. A federal judge literally had the records right there. The judge could look at what Patel said and then look at what the documents actually showed, and they didn't match. On the Epstein files specifically, Patel kept saying that court orders prevented the release of this material. He was basically telling the judge, I would love to release these files, but I can't because of legal restrictions already in place. My hands are tied. Except the judge looked at the actual orders, and those restrictions didn't exist. There were no blanket prohibitions. There were no seal orders blocking the release. Patel was claiming legal barriers that literally weren't there. This is where it gets really serious. When you're under oath in federal court and you make specific factual claims about legal documents and the judge determines that your claims are inaccurate, you're potentially committing perjury. That's not just a political disagreement. That's a federal crime carrying up to 5 years in prison. That's the kind of crime that ends careers and sends people to jail. And that's what Patel is now facing. Then there's the Stephen Miller angle. According to whistleblower sources that Senator Durbin cited, Patel didn't act alone in these purges. This was allegedly directed by Stephen Miller, one of Trump's key advisors. Miller would give direction, and then Patel would follow through by firing agents and blocking document releases. When Durbin confronted Patel about this connection in hearings, Patel denied knowing anything about it. But the whistleblowers said otherwise. They said Patel had direct communications about these purges. They said Patel knew exactly what was happening. The timing of the agent firings is what really raises eyebrows. At least 10 FBI staffers got terminated recently. Who are these people? Agents who worked on the classified documents investigation involving Trump at Mar-a-Lago. The case where Trump had boxes of classified material at his residence. The case that triggered a federal investigation. And who fired these agents? The FBI director who just got called out in court for claiming things that weren't true. Is it a coincidence that the people investigating the president end up losing their jobs right when the director gets exposed in a courtroom? Anyone paying attention sees what's happening here. This connects back to a broader pattern that's been developing over the past several months. Trump has been pretty vocal about wanting to remove or discipline people who investigated him. And now that he's in his second term, he's got people like Patel in positions of power who can actually act on those criticisms. Patel is in a unique position because he actually has personal knowledge of a lot of this stuff before becoming FBI director. He was involved in Trump's earlier legal battles. He knows who the investigators are. He knows what investigations happened. So when he fires agents and blocks documents, he knows exactly who he's targeting and what he's protecting. The judge's response was basically, no, stop it. The judge ordered Patel to release the materials by a specific deadline, and the warnings attached were severe. Criminal contempt charges and perjury prosecution were on the table. That's a serious threat. That tells you the judge thinks what Patel did was serious enough to pursue criminal charges if he doesn't comply. Here's what most mainstream coverage misses about this story. They treat the courtroom stuff and the agent firings as two separate stories. One is about legal violations, one is about personnel decisions, but they're not separate. They're connected. The firings are happening because of what Patel is trying to protect in court. The court cases are revealing what Patel is trying to cover up by firing people. The whole pattern makes sense when you see them as one coherent strategy. The strategy appears to be protect Trump at all costs, including potentially breaking federal law, committing perjury, firing investigators, and using the power of the FBI to punish people who investigated the president. That's a serious accusation, but that's what the evidence suggests. That's what the timeline shows. Some people will say the investigations into Trump were politically motivated, and maybe Patel is just cleaning house. But that's a completely separate question from whether Patel committed perjury under oath. You can debate whether the original investigations were fair, while simultaneously acknowledging that lying to a federal judge about court orders is not okay. Those are independent issues. Let's break down what's actually happening here in simple terms. Kash Patel, the FBI director, made specific claims in federal court. He said certain legal prohibitions existed. A judge checked the actual documents. Those prohibitions didn't exist. So either Patel was lying or he was so incompetent that he didn't understand the basic legal framework he was claiming to follow. Neither option is good when you're running the FBI. A federal judge doesn't just casually accuse someone of perjury. The judge reviewed the actual documents, compared them to Patel's testimony, found major discrepancies, and issued warnings about criminal contempt and perjury referrals. That's not partisan theater. That's a judge doing their job. This establishes that the FBI director cannot be trusted to tell the truth under oath. That's not a minor scandal. That's a fundamental integrity issue. How can you trust an agency run by someone who lies to federal judges? How can you believe anything that agency says? How can you believe investigations are conducted fairly when the person in charge has been caught making false statements under oath? The answer is you can't. And that's a massive problem for the FBI as an institution. Patel isn't just firing random people. He's specifically targeting agents involved in the Trump classified documents investigation. The same investigation that brought evidence against Trump regarding materials at Mar-a-Lago. The same investigation that raised serious national security questions. Why would Patel fire these specific people? The official story might be they weren't doing their jobs right or they violated some protocol, but the timing is suspicious. He gets caught in court making false claims about legal restrictions. Then boom, the agents who would have been affected by those restrictions lose their jobs. That's not a coincidence. That's retaliation. This looks like punishment for investigating Trump. This looks like removing witnesses and evidence. And when you combine this with Patel's false testimony, the pattern becomes even clearer. He's using his power as FBI director to protect Trump and punish Trump's critics. He's transforming a law enforcement agency into a political operation. Career FBI agents and officials are watching this. They see their director caught lying in court. They see investigators being fired for doing their job. They see political retaliation happening in real time. What's that going to do to morale? Agents are going to be afraid to do their jobs. Agents are going to worry about retaliation if they investigate the wrong person. That's not how a law enforcement agency should function. The FBI needs public trust to function. Citizens need to believe the agency is investigating crimes based on evidence and law, not based on who's politically connected. But when the director is caught committing perjury and firing investigators based on their work on Trump cases, that trust evaporates. This isn't just about Patel. This is about the entire institution. If the FBI becomes a tool for protecting one person or one political party, it stops being the FBI. It becomes something else entirely. That's dangerous for the country. What could actually happen to Patel here? The judge ordered him to comply with document releases by a specific deadline with explicit threats of criminal charges attached. Perjury convictions carry up to 5 years in prison. Criminal contempt convictions can also carry substantial prison time. Beyond prison, there's loss of law licenses, the end of any federal career, the permanent destruction of his reputation. Will those consequences actually happen? That depends on whether a prosecutor decides to pursue charges, whether Democrats in Congress push for accountability, whether public pressure mounts, whether Trump decides to protect Patel or throw him under the bus. But the legal mechanisms for consequences are absolutely there. The judge made that clear. Patel allegedly knew better. He's got legal background. He's been involved in previous Trump cases. He knows how the system works. So the excuse that he just didn't understand doesn't fly. He knows what he was doing, he just got caught. Here's what we're looking at. The FBI director got caught lying to a federal judge about court orders that don't exist. He's firing agents who investigated Trump. He's facing potential criminal charges for perjury and contempt. His testimony has been contradicted by actual court documents and whistleblower sources. This is affecting the midterm elections because people are losing faith in law enforcement institutions. This is affecting agency morale because agents are worried about retaliation. This is affecting the political landscape because Democrats are talking about impeachment and removal. None of this had to happen. Patel could have just been straight with the judge. He could have been honest about his intentions. Instead, he lied under oath, got caught, and now he's facing potential criminal prosecution. He transformed a personnel decision into a perjury case. He took a political situation and turned it into a criminal matter. This story is far from over. We're going to see congressional hearings. We're going to see potential impeachment moves. We're going to see court battles about document releases and consequences. The question of whether Patel survives in his position is still very much up in the air. Some people are already calling for his immediate removal. Others are saying he should resign before facing criminal charges. The pressure is mounting and the legal consequences are